Hi, I'm Steve.
Hi, I'm Panita. Well, it looks like we're going to take a look at safety today. You can never be too safe, and we know that EVs use high voltage. So what happens if a person gets an electric shock? I mean, just thinking about it kind of scares me.
It scares everybody, and that's a normal reaction. But if you think that EVs are dangerous just because they use high voltage, you've actually got the wrong idea. EVs are actually really safe because of all the extra caution that is taken in the manufacturing process. With that said, however, when an accident occurs or problems arise, technicians must be careful, of course.
Right. I mean, I guess I kind of get that. Generally, EVs are safe, but when the car does have a problem, we got to take extra precaution. Got it.
Exactly. All right, so let's talk about how to stay safe. First of all, you want to avoid any circumstances that could lead to an electric shock.
Well, I know that we can get an electric shock by coming into contact with an electric current, right? Through a high voltage wire.
That is true. However, in a work environment, electric shock accidents can happen even when there's no contact with high voltage wires. In any environment, actually, where electricity can flow through the human body, there's a danger of electric shock. So what we should do first is remove anything from our body that could be potentially dangerous and could potentially get us a shock. Seeing my watch on my wrist right now, in a work environment such as this, that's a no-no.
That's a no-no. So many metal accessories, no rings, no bracelets.
Yep, it is step number one, that is for sure. Now, let's talk about why high voltage is dangerous to human beings in general. The human body has a basic resistance to electricity of about 5,000 ohms. Now, if we divide the voltage flowing in a human body by 5,000 ohms, we get the number of amperes, or A. For example, if someone is shocked with 12 volts, we divide 12 volts by 5,000 ohms and we get 2.4 milliamperes.
Okay, 2.4 milliamperes. You don't really know if that's okay. Is that like fatal?
Yeah, that's a very good point. We need to put that in a context, right? So if you are shocked by 2.4 milliamperes, it's going to sting you.
Okay.
It's not going to feel great, but it won't hurt that much. 5 milliamperes, a little more than double that though, that will cause a small muscle spasm in a human being.
Okay.
When we jump from 10 to 15 milliamperes, that's when we start to run into problems because that's when things start to get quite painful. But even still at that point, you can remove yourself from the source of the electricity. Now, let's talk about 15 to 30 milliamperes, the next range. That will cause strong spasms and that could result in neuroparalysis. But let's talk about a more dangerous level, the 50 to 100 milliampere. That's where neuroparalysis is certain, meaning that the person will be unable to remove themselves from the source of the electricity by themselves. They will need assistance then. And you just mentioned death from 50 to 100 milliamperes. The result can be death. We have to be extremely, extremely careful.
Right. I'm glad that you're here. I'm not by myself.
All right, so as I explained using 12 volts as an example, the Kona EV as another example, the voltage for that is 360 volts. That's equal to 72 milliamperes in a human body.
Oh, that's fatal territory.
If the 800 volt of the Ioniq 5 enters the human body, that's going to generate 160 milliamperes.
Oh, wow.
And if you remember, as I mentioned before, 50 to 100 in terms of milliamperes, that can cause death. And now with the Ioniq 5, we're talking 160 milliamperes. We really, really have to be careful.
Hopefully that never happens, but you say that when a person experiences a serious electric shock, they can't remove themselves from the situation, from the source of electricity without any help. So that means that somebody around them, and we ourselves sometimes, will have to separate them from the source quickly enough.
That is correct.
But how do we do that? I mean, do we just pull them away?
That is something you never ever do, and with the help of an assistant, I will show you why. Let's get this table out of the way, and then we'll bring in our partner.
All right.
Okay, so we've got the table out of the way. We brought our assistant in who has unfortunately suffered a serious accident.
Poor guy.
Poor guy. Let's give him a name. Let's call him Steve. But we're going to get Steve into a safe situation.
Okay.
Never touch with your bare hands. Instead, you're going to use this tool, which is a rescue hook. So I'll let you take that now. So first, what you're going to do is identify a space that you are going to drag Steve to. You want that space to be empty and you want it to be clear so that you can move him quickly and efficiently. Once we have that space, now we're going to focus on moving Steve and removing him from the source of the electric shock.
All right, Steve.
Well done. So now, what do you think we should do next?
CPR?
Yeah, CPR is an important step, but first, let's make a call to the emergency services. That's always the first thing you want to do. And also, if there's an AED nearby, an automated external defibrillator, you're going to want to use this too.
All right, we saved Steve's life.
Yeah, so he's okay now. Let's get him out of here, shall we?
All right.
Good
Bye,
job,
Steve.
Steve.
You know how sometimes an electric shock by accident can cause a fire to break loose? What would you do in that case? How would you put that out?
Well, I think when a fire breaks out, a lot of people's instinct is to pour water on it. Pouring water on a fire is only going to make it more serious, so we need the fire extinguisher. So I'll ask you to bring in the fire extinguisher just behind you there.
Ooh, got one right-handed.
But a lot of people think, too, that all fire extinguishers are the same.
Oh, are they not?
They are absolutely
Oh, wow.
not. There are different types of fire extinguishers for different types of fires. If you look down at the sticker on the extinguisher, you'll see BC
Oh,
there.
there it is.
Yes, exactly. So this fire extinguisher is capable of putting out an electrical fire. So you want to look for a fire extinguisher that has the label C, BC, or ABC on the label, and that will put out an electrical fire.
Oh, that's a fun fact. I really never knew that. Well, I'm pretty sure that the one in my kitchen won't really be of use for here.
Unless you have one exactly like that, maybe not.
Man, electric shocks, they're no joke. They really are terrifying. So, what's the best way to prevent an accident in the first place?
Well, great question. So to prevent an electrical accident, removing the source of the electricity is always the best strategy. So let me ask you a question. What should we do before we fix electrical wires on the wall at home in our houses?
Turn off all the power, lower the fuse box?
Okay, I thought you were going to say call the electrician, so all right, you're on the right track. You're absolutely right. Lower the fuse box, and it's the same for EVs. An electrical car also has a fuse box, and it's called a service interlock. So if you open the PE room, you'll find a label with a firefighter's cap on it, and if you remove this, all the high voltage power will be shut off. And for this Kona EV, we have a different device that functions like the service interlock. When the back seats are removed, you can find this yellow cap, and that's called the service plug. And removing that will stop the high voltage current just like the service interlock does.
Well, then aren't they the same thing? They do different?
Yeah, that's a good question. They do the same thing, but the method is different. The service interlock cuts the signal to shut off the high voltage, and the service plug, that cuts the high voltage battery circuit to accomplish the same goal.
Aha, so cut the signal or high voltage circuit. So they are quite different.
Yep, cut the battery circuit, exactly, and they are different. The service plug actually was used for earlier models of HEVs and EVs. The Sonata HEV used the DN8 version, while later models of the Kona EV and Ioniq 5, they only have a service interlock. There's no service plug in those models.
All right. Well, let's get to work then. I mean, what's first? Let's get to maintenance.
All right, I'm glad that you're really motivated. The first thing we should do, of course, is to set up a fence to keep people away from the high voltage vehicle.
Right.
So maybe you could help me out with that?
Just let everybody know, do not enter. Okay, done deal.
Perfect. All right, so we've got the fence set up. The next step we've already completed because we need to put on our protective equipment, our gloves.
All right, geared up, fenced up. Let's get ready to work.
I do love the enthusiasm, but we still have a couple of more steps to take before we get to where you want to get to. If you could step over here with me, we should shut off the 12-volt source before we remove the high voltage plug. So your 12-volt source is here, and to remove it, you simply pull it up and off.
Oh, that was easy.
Yep, it's easy. Now that we've disconnected the 12-volt source, now we have to pull out either the service plug or the service interlock for safety. So we'll take out the service interlock, just like that.
Okay, well, do you need to remove both of them, or?
The service plug and the service interlock?
Right.
Great question. The answer is no. You only have to remove one of them, either the service interlock or the service plug. But when you do that, you have to wait at least 5 minutes for the electricity stored in the capacitor to be fully discharged.
That sounds great, but you can't work on this all the time, all day, every day. Maintenance and car repairs, it takes hours, even days. I gotta go to work, I gotta go to the bathroom.
Right.
What if someone comes in and causes an accident while I'm on the toilet?
Yeah, I understand what you're saying. You can't stay with the vehicle at all times sometimes, right? Well, that's a very important point. And like you said, EV maintenance can take hours, it can sometimes take days, but while working on an EV with a risk of a short circuit, technicians, they may need to spend some time away from the vehicle. And in that scenario, another technician could come along and reconnect the electricity, wondering, oh, well, why is this here, right? Yeah. So because of that concern, one dedicated technician needs to be responsible for the entire repair process from start all the way to finish.
I feel like that should be for every vehicle, really, because that person knows exactly what he's doing.
Yes, and if someone new comes along, they might not know at what point in the process the car is.
Exactly. So what's the solution here? What should we do?
Okay, well, when this technician needs to step away from the vehicle, he should either carry the service interlock with him or put it into a lockbox and lock it up before stepping out. I have a lockbox right behind me. I have the service interlock in my hand. I'm going to safely put it in there so there's no confusion.
Yeah, you don't want to lose that piece either.
Okay, so there we go. That is safe and sound. For the Kona EV, by the way, the service interlock can be separated. I took it out and I put it in the lockbox. But for the Ioniq 5, it doesn't detach completely. And it's because of that we need to put up a safety fence around the vehicle and also put a caution sign up on the roof.
So if the interlock connector is separated, what's going to happen then?
The interlock system is basically a safety device to check whether the high voltage connector is perfectly linked or not. So therefore, if any one element of the interlock is disconnected, the battery, and the battery is the source of electricity, that will be the first thing to shut off. And that's a really strong safeguard.
Yeah, okay, I get that. The interlock is kind of like a monitor of the flow of high voltage inside these cables, and then it'll immediately shut off if a problem occurs in any part. All right, this interlock system, it plays a critical role.
It absolutely does. And as I said, safety is always the top priority. And for maintenance work, we can shut off the electricity by using that interlock. And also, just remember, if you're ever mixed up or you forget something or something is a little bit confusing, then you can always refer to the service manual for the particular vehicle that you're working on.
Yeah, that's good to know. This interlock system, I'm digging it.
You're on board?
Yeah, I love safety.
Well, that's great to hear. All right, well, in this next session, we are going to see how the high voltage power of an EV works.